Thank you, everyone, for listening to Soul Talk with host Jeremy McDonald, the author of Peace Be Still. You can check out more about our shows or about Jeremy at soultalkradio.org and jeremymcdonald.net. And now for our show.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for listening to Soul Talk. We have a great show tonight. I'm pretty excited about our guest and the energy that has been building just before the show. We have Sierra Neblina on the line, and she is going to be a powerhouse of energy, and we're going to talk about a lot of great topics over the next hour. So get ready, everybody. And just so you know, if you want to call in and ask a question, call in at 646-929-1371. Just a little bit about Sierra. Long ago, Sierra answered the call to come and assist our planet, Gaia, during this time of ascension and great change. A Pleiadian Starseed, Sierra was born to a civilian mother of a Cherokee and Irish descent and a military father with a mysterious otherworldly background. Years later, Sierra would learn her parents consented to participate in a human hybrid ET experiment, and then she later joined the U.S. military, which she did in 1990 while serving in the reserve. Sierra had her first ET experience when she was visited by a little gray. Sierra, thanks for being on the show, and welcome.
Oh, thank you so much, Jeremy, for having me on. It's my pleasure, and it's an honor to be here with you.
Wonderful, wonderful. So let's touch maybe briefly on your past, but I know we kind of want to dig into some deep topics here. So can you talk? Obviously, I just gave your description, but can you talk a little bit about, especially about the human hybrid experiment and trip to Norad, or your I think it was an unexpected trip to Norad. So from what I understand,
very unexpected, yes. Okay, well, I think I'll start by saying that it's been quite a journey here on the planet, and I came in as a volunteer, and through the encouragement of Richard Dolan writing down my life story when I met him in August at the Wake Up Now conference in Albuquerque, 2011 it was. We just hit it off like two old friends, and we stayed up all night long talking, and then I took him to the airport the next day, and after me sharing what had been going on in my life, he said, Sierra, you need to write your story down. It's important that people understand these experiences and some of these programs that are running and so on. And we fast forward to now and some of the current issues that we are dealing with now. But, let me backtrack just a little bit. When I started to write this book, the last thing I wanted to do was delve into my life. It was kind of a rocky roller coaster of a life, and I experienced it much like an outsider would, in a harsh environment, in a hostile environment. I was born empathic. I was born with a lot of my intuitive skills already activated in place. I was having prophetic dreams about I was having prophetic dreams about events that would then come true, but I was also having dreams from the time I was like 2-3-year-old about earth changes. And for me, it was like a calling card of don't forget why you are here. But for much of my life, I just kind of navigated it like it was something was happening to me, some crazy roller coaster of a ride, until through the encouragement of Richard, I started writing my story down and started to remember and digging in. And it wasn't an easy thing to just sit down and account. It's literally been an ongoing process, even currently, of dealing with things that came up that I didn't remember until I started digging and really started, putting the pictures together for myself, and also gathering evidence and witnesses and testimony to a lot of different things that I had experienced. As I wrote the book, and as I started to work with some galactic energies who were in 2012 and 13 helping me work with timeline and jumping timeline and moving forward in time and backwards in time, I was able to go back to a lot of these experiences that I was having and see it from an outsider's perspective, see it as it actually unfolded, because as we grow up, we have filters and perceptions that we look through, and situation might look or feel completely different from your experience as you're having it than when you go back in retrospect and observe as a third party the circumstances. And so I've literally been working with some galactic energies to help me piece together parts of my story that have been coming together beautifully. I remembered that I was a Pleiadian ambassador on a science vessel that had been involved in Earth's creation and all of her attributes for about 250,000 years when Gaia sent out the distress call, basically when people harnessed weapons of mass destruction and time travel at the same time, and this was the Nazi group in Germany during World War II. And she sent out a distress call and got the attention of a lot of the councils and galactic beings and watchers that were overseeing the progress. And I volunteered to come down, and when I volunteered to come down, I came into a broken family to help repair some of the cycles, also to help shed light on a lot of these different programs that are running, MK Ultra and Super Soldier Program and remote viewing and different things like that, which I've been involved in through my entire life. I was much like Corey, the new whistleblower that just came forward, who was talking about his testing as an empathic intuitive. I had really clipped along on my book and was feeling like it was going to come out very quickly. I was hoping to have it out this month, and kind of hit a little bit of a hiccup because when Corey started to share his experiences, it triggered a whole windfall of memories that had been hidden that came to the forefront that I could deal with and now start to integrate into the story and piece together a much broader perspective of what's happening on the planet and what happened with my own personal story. But I was, because of who I am and how I came in, I strongly believe that not only is my father an otherworldly being, but through being in contact and having Captain Randy Kramer, Captain K, come onto my radio program at Galactic U Radio Network, we had several personal conversations and where he helped to clarify some of my story, and including a little bit that I'll touch on and when I went into NORAD, that this gentleman that I was interacting with was from Naval Space Command. And anybody who's been following his story, I would encourage you, or you haven't heard anything, I would encourage you to check both Captain Randy Kramer and this new whistleblower, Corey, that's come forward, their testimonies, the hours of interviews that they've done, because they're bringing to light a very important aspect of our moving forward with disclosure. Because we're in the final steps of it, folks. I'm very, very excited. I've been now released to be able to talk about a lot of information I wasn't able to process and release before. I just gave little bits and pieces of some Dreamtime work that I was doing. The ball was rolling very quickly. But when I was 24, just after reuniting with my biological family, because I came into a broken family, a situation, we were taken away by the state for abuse. When I was 9, I was adopted when I was 12 by a very conservative Southern Baptist family, which was traumatic in its own right, being someone who was very intuitive and was having a lot of interactions with otherworldly beings. And thankfully, I've always had a very strong presence with me, Archangel Michael, through my entire lifetime that told me when to say things, when not to say things. So fortunately, I didn't end up, with a needle in my arm and stuck in a nut house for a while, like I've seen some of my light workers, have to deal with in their lifetime. But after going into the military in 1990 during Desert Storm, and then coming out of the reserves and going into civilian life, I had some hard years of coping because I was also being taken and in the same similar program that Corey was in, where I was forced to participate in remote viewing programs. I was forced to participate in other astral programs that they had going on off planet. And the torture that Corey referred to in his interview, how they would get me to continue to participate because I'm so compassionate towards animals and different things like that, as they would hurt animals until I would then acquiesce and continue to participate in their remote viewing programs and such. There was some information that the certain branches of our partners in contrast were trying to get from different space programs that were going on at the time. And so as we all know, and as it's starting to come to light, these departments are very compartmentalized, and the left hand never knows what the right hand is doing. And thankfully, with Captain Kramer's information coming forward, we understand that there is a Naval Airspace Command, and there's 3 different kinds of groups that are oversee from a military perspective, the world and our galaxy, and then stretching out into the universe. And so Naval Air Space Command, per Captain Randy Kramer's sharing, is that, or testimony, is that Naval Air Command oversees all the different space programs that have been operating for well over 50 years in our solar system. Some really exciting information is coming forward about this new race of extraterrestrials that are in our solar system called the Blue Avians, and I'll get to that in a minute. But because I came through and came in the way that I did as a volunteer, my DNA was more activated than the soul group that had been quarantined on the planet. And if you want to know more about that, just reference my other work, or even listen to the interview I did with Jeremy and Justin on Sunday. I went into that a little bit. But as a volunteer, I came down here activated, DNA activated, and when my mother was pregnant with me, she was being visited for several months by very benevolent beings, different races. She said there was about 5 or 6 different races that were interacting with her. And then later on, she started to be taken against her will by some of the branches that we're now familiar with, the Zeta hybridization programs, the Zetas. Some of the Draconians were starting to abduct her and take her against her will. And so I believe that somewhere somebody was tracking these souls that would come down in these bodies. There's several different programs going, not only tracking the volunteers that have come here, but also very specific genetics on the planet, because this is really what this whole last evolution of humans on the planet's been about, is tracking how these new genetics and these very different genetics were going to operate on the planet. And so when I joined the military, as we now know, the military, all of the military, but very certainly certain branches of the military, have an agreement, or had an agreement, it has since been stopped, to trade genetic material, human beings, for their hybridization program, because they lost the natural ability to evolve, for technology and information. Now, don't get it confused. The military and different branches of the military have been very responsible for torturing information out of different galactics that have crash landed or that they've brought down here onto the planet. And at the very beginning, it wasn't a mutual agreement from the Zetas. It was something that was tailored later through several different came forward. But I found myself in the middle of it, where in 1994, after reuniting with my biological family, I woke up one night and there was a Zeta in my room, and I freaked out. I had been increasingly elevating my psychic ability with a group of women, a crone group of circle of women in Manitou Springs. I'm born into, as a side note, Cherokee medicine line, and at some point the medicine blood activates, and we call it it's referred to as the blood burning, and it's where we individuals who are born into the bloodline are welcome to start the training and be brought in to the formal training of the shamanism and different things like that. But we're given an option because our DNA activates at certain points. And my DNA had been being activated for a couple of years up to that once I got out of the military. And I had been searching for guidance, and I'd gone to several different shaman medicine men and women to understand my dreams and what was happening for me. And so while being in this group of medicine women in Manitou Springs, I had been consciously working on elevating my conscious interaction, because up to that point it was sort of like I was being pulled into these dreams, these prophetic dreams and earth change dreams, and I didn't know what was happening. Because I had also started to become drawn into when world catastrophes would happen, like disasters would happen, I would be pulled in dream time in my astral form, and I would just stand there feeling helpless, like, what am I supposed to do? And these women were training me, this is what you do. And so later on in life, I had the ability to then be drawn into things like Katrina and actually be able to help the people that were experiencing these great tragic events by either helping them to survive, keeping alligators away from them, helping search and rescue responders to find people that were almost incapacitated and able to speak whenever they were going from door to door, breaking in the doors, trying to find out if people were in there. And so these are just some of the things that I was doing back then. But I woke up with a Zeta in my room one day, and I found out the next day after bringing a friend of mine in from the spiritual group. I said, there's a Zeta, this gray thing in my room, and I don't know what happened here. And she scanned me up and down, said I was pregnant, and I thought it was a terrible joke she was trying to play on me. But after she explained, after listening to what had happened to me, about waking up and having this interaction for about 4 hours one night, she said, this is what happens with the Zeta program, blah, 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 blah. I became so infuriated. I got the group of women together, and they said, what do you want to do? This is the soul agreement you made. And I said, well, I want to break the contract. I want to keep the baby. They can't just use my body, violate me, and go on type of a thing. And what is unique in the story, and I think it's something that is a highlight to the point, is that I wasn't in a relationship with a man. So I wasn't, oops, I got pregnant. It was, I'm in a relationship with a woman, and there's no way. In Hades, I was pregnant up to that point. There was no oops. And so when I started to show and they formed a psychic circle around me, and they did a lot of work on moving me from place to place, told me, don't go to a regular doctor, they'll know, then they'll take the baby. They'll know that you know, and then they'll take the baby. And so this then ensued 4 months of me moving from place to place all over Colorado Springs, trying to keep me mobile, trying to keep me from being in the same spot. They were protecting me psychically. And unlike any of the other hybridization program stories that I've heard, I was able to hold on to the baby for a longer period of time, somewhere estimation around 3.5 to 4 months. And then I woke up one day and it was gone. I ended up moving back into the apartment with my girlfriend at the time in Colorado Springs, and I was very upset, very hurt. I started digging, wanting my own answers, doing things like calling up headquarters and asking them, what is this Zeta hybridization program, and what do you guys think that you're doing? You can't just use us and abuse us and type of thing. And, of course, nobody knew what I was talking about. And about 2 months later, just as we were getting ready to move out of the apartment complex into a house, I drove home because I'd quit. I was in construction at the time, and I was a framer. And when I became pregnant, I stopped doing that physical work, and I started driving the roach coach. It was a couple months after the baby was gone, and I was depressed and trying to deal and grapple with what is this and what's going on in my life, and now what on top of everything else that I'm experiencing. I just don't understand. And I came home, and there was a black sedan and 2 men in black waiting for me, and they took me into Norad. And then 8 hours later, they had taken me and shown me one of the men was human, and one I believe was not human. And the one that was not human was one of the most powerful empathic beings I'd ever come across, had the ability to clear my mind and blank me out for long periods of time and distract me when I felt threatened after I got in the car, realized I got in the car with 2 men that had not said a word to me, wouldn't answer where we were going. I started to really get upset. And with my training and such, probably the safest thing for him to have done is just to blank me out. And I did. I was completely blanked out. I went into NORAD, and I spent about 8 hours in NORAD that day with them. Of a couple, probably I would say 2 to 3 hours of that time I'm still working on bringing up the what happened. I don't remember consciously fully what happened. But what I do remember is them being taken into NORAD into 3 different areas, completely different areas of the underground base, and shown a disc, shown beaming technology from beaming a Pepsi can from one end of the room to the other, and then they showed me a 6-foot-tall Zeta, a gray, that freaked me out completely, and then took me into a room and sat me down, and about 45 minutes later a man walked in wearing a aviation jumpsuit, flight suit that is normally blue, the colors of Air Force, because that's who wore that. And until I spoke with Randy Kramer and didn't get the distinction, but finally got the distinction that whoever was wearing this jumpsuit that was the color of navy, the navy color green, green-brown, I didn't understand until later that that person was Naval Airspace Command. This was the kind of jumpsuits that Naval Airspace Command wore and still wears today. So this person proceeded to tell me later on in 2012, I had another memory package unlock, and it was this man telling me he was my father and that he was going to protect me the best way he could, but I was in danger at that point and that I needed to run. And so this was 1994 until 2003, I just kind of disappeared. I went off the grid. I broke up with my girlfriend. I went on the road. I went and stayed on reservations. I trained with shamans. I just did remodeling and construction. I just didn't have a checking account, a credit card. I didn't have a cell phone. I was so far freaked out that I just went underground for many, many years. And also, during the time I was underground, I was continuing to develop my abilities, my psychic abilities, while running around and training with and about my bloodline and the medicine line and so on. And in 2003, a person landed on my radar that told me about landmark education, and it just really got me freed up. And it's a study of ontology, and I was like the poster child for it. I went in there just ready to give up for life, and they got me so freed up about my past and so empowered. I just jumped in with 2 feet. I started a business where I would build multi-million-dollar spec and custom homes in Summit County. I hung a shingle as a psychic for the very first time at the Winds of Change bookstore in Frisco, Colorado, up in Summit County. And started to work with people and started drawing attention, including search and rescue for Summit County, who started to utilize my abilities to help find people that were missing for long periods of time. And it was always cadaver recovery, and I was able to track those down and tell them where those people were. And I really took a passion during that time working in the spirit realm. I was really being trained in the spirit realm of things and trapped spirits and, ghosts and stuff. And I did some work for a while going and clearing areas of trapped souls and lost souls. And my health started to deteriorate. And in 2005, and pretty rapidly actually, I had the means and the money at the time. I was doing very well, and I sought out a specialist in Vail for some reproductive issues that I was experiencing, a lot of pain. It first started out with my menstrual cycle, and then it moved to all during times of the month. I just couldn't figure out what was going on, and that was coupled with some pretty severe migraines that I had been enduring since Desert Storm, actually. And so I trace it all back as evidence of the vaccination for Desert Storm, as a lot of vets have had to deal with in receiving that vaccination, whether they were in Desert Storm or whether they were in active duty and mobilized for Desert Storm. They were all given the same vaccinations, and so I came down with Desert Storm syndrome and was dealing with a lot of the physical reproduction, all the physical implications of that. And in 2005, had an emergency hysterectomy and was put on Yasmin, which has now been pulled by the FDA for killing too many women. And it started a whole other set of circumstances, blood clotting and different things that were happening in my body. And one thing after the other, my whole physical body felt like it was deteriorating, and had an emergency gallbladder surgery removal. I had really bad endometriosis and was dealing a lot with becoming severely allergic to a lot of different foods, and including gluten and so on. And so since 2007, in October 2007, it all accumulated to finally I started stroking for 4 hours and made it into an emergency room, had no idea what was going on with myself. I didn't know. The first thing that goes out is logic when you're stroking, and I was stroking on both sides of my cerebral cortex. And I got into the emergency room and collapsed and died after saying something is wrong. They brought me back. But during the time that I was gone, time happens differently on the other side. So I had a lot of time on the other side to have a conversation with a galactic and an angel, who this angel told me that this galactic was going to be coming down and taking my place to complete my mission. And I said, no way. There's no way. There's no way. I'm not giving up now. I've done so much to this point. Is there any other way that we can do this? And the angel said, your body's been too badly damaged that because of the timeline, we need to send in someone who can raise up the vibration as a walk-in and heal your body faster. And I said, well, is there any way that we can both do that? Because I don't want to give up on my mission. It was agreed upon, and plans were set in place, and it was an extremely hard integration process, but then I woke up in the hospital. I was completely paralyzed on my left side, and they said that over 25% of my brain had been damaged accumulatively for both sides. And, the doctor came in with, their whole prognosis of, you have to start dealing with the fact this is a lot of damage. You may never walk or speak properly again and all this other stuff. And I just knew that wasn't the case. I didn't remember when I woke up that I had agreed to have a braided walk-in come in and help me on my mission. And it wasn't until almost a year later when my brain was healed enough to find myself in space and time, and also that a lot of high strangeness started to happen around me through lots of series of events that I've spoken about before. I met Don Daniels, who introduced me to Jeff Peckman, who introduced me to Lavendar through the Starseed Hotline. And Lavendar, during the time, was the only resource that anybody knew of about what a walk-in is. And I went to the Starseed Hotline and dedicated about 2 years of my time helping to support them in their cause until we separated ways in 2012 after co-leading a trip to the south of France. And at that time, I jumped on with the 2012 scenario blogspot and became a co-host on Enlight Radio's Let's Talk 2012 and Beyond with Dave Schmidt. And that was a lot of fun for a while. And then we parted ways. I parted ways with the 2012 scenario and ended up co-leading a trip with Dr. Croman Bolcher to Egypt. There were so many things that were happening during this time. This is just daytime work, but in nighttime, what had started to happen after I met Richard in 2011 at the end of the year and started to write my life down, more and more of who I am and what my mission started to make itself prevalent. And I started working with a galactic energy that I can now speak about, which is called the Blue Avians, who are the wardens of the galaxy, who have come in, actually the universe, who have come in to help us in these last few years of raiding in the cabal, of doing a lot of projects that I'd like to, talk about now. Is there any questions, Jeremy, of anything I've spoken up to this point?
Absolutely. Well, I think one of the questions, because you're talking, we're obviously talking about your life experience, but there's a bigger scope here that goes obviously beyond even the planet. You came here to help here, but I mean, what is causing, I guess, we can go into elites and stuff like that. What is causing the control that happens on this planet? I've always felt that it was consciousness and a shadow side of consciousness that works in there. I know there's the philosophy about the archons and stuff like that, and some people say that the Greys, of course, obviously are creating suppression. It's not just our government or governments or military. There's something behind all of that causes our planet to obviously be like a slave planet in the sense of unconscious people walking around, because we know that there's a spark in each one of them that we can awaken to wake them up and make them empowered. Something's obviously trying to suppress that.
Yes. So that's a great point. If anybody has looked up Stitchin's work, I would advise you to go. Now, I just want to say, and I want to preface this, is yes, this is my experience, and I'm reporting on what I've experienced and the different things that I've gone through here on the planet, just as an example to help people wake up, to bring lights to certain things. And this is my experience, and please take from this whatever you want to take from it. But the thing it is that I want to do is empower people. Yeah, there's a lot of shenanigans that have been happening on the planet with a lot of different programs running to work against people's natural evolution. So let me back up a little bit, and I'll be referencing people's work, and please use your discernment and go to the internet and look up these different things and take from these different examples what you need for your own personal evolution. But by no means am I here to spread the fear propaganda or make you feel like that you're disempowered. It's just the opposite. I've come through a life that's been pretty extraordinarily hard and difficult, and I live as an example that no matter what you're facing, you can triumph over it. And going back to Stitchin, he talks about the Anunnaki coming in, and it's a very good point. And the world is a lot older than what our religious institutions and our schools are telling us. That information was purposefully withheld. But let me see if I can do a quick 5-minute speeding up to where we're at, and how we got here. Stitchin's work, yes, the world is way older than 4,000 years old, this planet. Gaia herself is a sentient being. She is conscious, and she has seen the evolution of many different cultures come up and reach anthropos, self-realization, and then move into the different dimensions, or move off planet, or continue on with their growth process. When there was the next level of you can see that in the evidence through the Ancient Aliens, going online, History Channel, look at all the tracking the history of just the last 100,000 years on the planet, where the continents have split and water has risen, and underneath the ocean and all over the world we're finding these ancient temples that are dating 10, 15, 20, 30,000 years old. It's because they've been around for a long time. These are the other cultures that I'm referring to. Now, way back when, the Anunnaki were passing through our solar system, and they're like, oh, great, look, there's a planet that has a lot of the minerals that we need to help us protect ourselves in our atmosphere. And they sent people, their Anunnaki brethren, down to create from Homo erectus a comparable work slave force of human beings, mixing their DNA with the Homo erectus on the planet and creating some of the first human life as we know it here on the planet. And so when that happened, because there's always watchers, there's always Gaia herself is paying attention to everything that's happening. A distress call was sent out, and the council showed up. There's many different councils. There's been many different channelers, many different light workers that have talked about all these different councils and all these different intelligence and thought forms and consciousness forms trying to connect with us and empower us and bring information in. But what had happened was there were other civilizations, Pleiadians, Arcturians, some of the more advanced civilizations that were in this galaxy that knew about this new fledgling planet that was being developed and waiting for the natural evolution to happen on her, came down and said, wait a minute, if the Anunnaki can come in here and create their own version of species, then we should be able to have the right to do so ourselves. And so it was set in place that a handful of different galactic beings were able to start their own genetic line on the planet, but separate from each other on different continents. And that's how we ended up with such a diverse genetic pool, and for which we see here on the planet now. And each one of those galactic beings tracked their own evolution of their different people. Now, there have been a couple of civilizations that their own gods, their own galactic beings, their own galactic people oversaw their genetic program in the way that they saw fit. Now, what I'm trying to say is that that's where you have Ancient Aliens coming in. That's where you have the history of and the proof that's been put together, so well done, by several people on the planet, Philip Coppens and Giorgio and the whole Ancient Alien gang, and they've been working on piecing together and putting in history the different gods, which would be galactic beings that interacted with civilization, the different people all over the planet. And they would interact in the way that they thought fit. Now, they talk about China being oversaw for many thousands of years by a galactic being that came on the breath of a dragon, and they've all decoded this on Ancient Aliens about this being that came down and taught them math and science and all different types of things that the Chinese excelled at way back when. And then this particular god left after a while. Then you take into consideration all of these different civilizations having their own seer. Now, I can speak more to, you want to know more about that, go back to Ancient Aliens and watch all the episodes. I can speak more personally to the Cherokee Nation being overseen by the Pleiades. The Pleiadians are responsible for the Native American race here on this continent. And so way back when, and the elders have been coming together and meeting of all the different Native American races have been coming together because they were taught verbally passed down by verbal traditions about our space brothers, and the shamans and the tribe elders held some of the more sacred information about our galactic brothers and sisters, and are the ones coined to say, from the stars we come and to the stars we shall return. And so we have a whole history of all of these things that are happening leading up to now. Now let me go back just a little bit. The Babylonian financial system. This was put in basically the system as we have it now, and the kind of consciousness that seated itself on the planet. Well, we had different evolutionary things starting to happen. We'll just go back to, say, 1,000, 2,000, or 3,000 years BC. Actually, they're correcting me, and they say 4,000 years BC. Now, remember, Gaia is relatively young in our solar system, and we have seen proof of life on Mars, I'm not Venus yet, but we will. But we've had Venusian visitors that stayed in the White House with us, and so on. And so there's an account about the Venusians. And so life on Mars, buildings on Mars. There's been so many different forms of life that have come through this galaxy, had their time in these different planets. And on Mars, and on a star, and on a planet that has been blown all to pieces, Meladak, I think is what it's called, there were two warring tribes, and they constantly fought each other, and the Martians blew the heck out of this other planet and destroyed it, and then they were run off by the galactic wardens, but there were some of those beings that found their way to Earth and have been on the Earth for a long time. I'm not even going to touch on the inner Earth and Argathians and inner Earth life and all the Watchers. I mean, I am touching on it, but I'm not going to go into too much of detail. But here on the planet, we have a myriad of different life forms that we would call alien. We have just started to research and get into the depths of the ocean. There is several species that live under the ocean that have tried to just kind of keep themselves away from human beings, but with all the sonic stuff and all this silly things that's been going on that the Navy and stuff like that has been doing, we've ran across some of these mermaid-like people. I really like the work that they did on the mer people, who are what they call them, the sea monkeys. At one point in evolution, right before Homo erectus started to really be prevalent, there was some species that went into the ocean. And so we have inner Earth beings, we have outer Earth beings, we have on the surface beings, and that's us. And we're the young kids on the block. These guys, if you want to call them Alpha Draconians, you want to call them the old warring Martian, Babylonian type influence, started back in the time of Babylonia, where these particular beings came out from underground, and they said, hey, they started searching out the ones who wanted to be in power. Now, during this time of about 3,000 years up to before Christ, there was a lot of warring because the people on the planet had grown enough and they started spilling over onto each other on certain continents and across continents and stuff like that. And then we have all these conquerors that wanted to go out there and conquer the world and so on. Well, these little slippery bastards came out of the darkness and they sought out these greedy, world-hungry, patriarchal type people, and they said, we will teach you how to enslave the world. And so we start to see the Babylonian architecture. Now, they even got themselves into the church, okay? And it has been a slow build and a slow progressive infiltration of this thought form, of this consciousness, of this way of practicing and being that started back in the Babylonian times, forward through the time of Christ and forward into now, reaching its slimy little fingers into politics and religion. But religion is where it started. It actually got into religion first. It got into Constantine and the church. It got into the structure of this is how we control the world. This is what happened. The Galactics said, oh no, they're going off track. What should we do? We'll send in a SWAT team. The SWAT team was Christ and Mary Magdalene. Okay? They were supposed to be here teaching us about love and about truth. And then the reaction from Babylonian darker consciousness culture was to, one of the things that they were taught was to how you can separate and conquer a people is to separate the divinity in people, separating the divine masculine and the divine feminine. And so during the time of Christ and the church really started to focus in on the divine feminine and demonizing the divine feminine and making women be unnatural, not right, from the stories of Adam and Eve in the Bible. So then Constantine got in there, who was very well connected to these dark energies, who wanted to rule the world and wanted to dictate what history would be, started messing with the Bible and chopping up the stories and putting into our basic fundamental belief structure, separating us from source, separating us from self. And it has only just taken root further and further and further. At that time, when Christ and that whole Mary Magdalene, when that team failed at what they were doing, there was a quarantine put on the earth, meaning no more new souls coming in, no souls going out. We will work on this until it is done. And because these people were taught, and then you start to introduce our galactic brothers and sisters, and some of them not being as highly evolved, who have just ran across the planet, or these other beings that say, hey, there are this technology, because we started bringing down craft in 1920, purposely crashing craft, because they were told how to do it by these dark beings that were left behind on the planet, who sought refuge here and who wanted to run and control. I mean, we're basically, since the time of Babylonia till now, just playing out the same ridiculous thing that happened on Mars that eventually destroyed its people and the surface. And so now then they started to hear about and realize the technology of fluoride, because then the waves of volunteers started to come in. We started to see, per Dolores Cannon's work, please look at her, 3 waves of volunteers. We've actually had a lot more waves of volunteers coming in since then, that souls were trapped on the planet. It was put in quarantine. More and more attention started coming to the planet, but there was more and more manipulation and control once this Babylonian financial structure was set in place from 1942 and on. The United States was trapped up in it, and that's when the birth certificates, we were switched to corporation. It was switched to a corporation state, and everything is accountable to the Pope. Everything is lined up and set up underneath the Roman Catholic Church. And it is a sickness that has been growing and spreading for a while, including them starting to use technical things from HARP to a lot of this other weaponry to try to keep people dumbed down, because this was the Great Awakening. They knew it was the Great Awakening. But things are starting to unravel and fall apart with the cabal and these beings who thought that have been passing down this belief structure from cabal to cabal to cabal, from one generation to another, saying that their God was going to come back during the time of 2012, and it didn't happen. The Blue Avians stepped in, basically the wardens of the universe, and please reference Corey's testimony on that, have been coming in and starting to physically stop what's happening for the last several years, a handful of years now. And I started personally working with them in 2012.
Wow. Very cool. So
there's hope.
Let me ask you a question.
My whole point is, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, go ahead and finish your thought, because I have a question after that.
Okay. The whole point is that it's not all for naught. I was just following up on the line of how do we get here. And people are waking up. There's a lot of help for us here. The Galactics aren't here to save us. They're here to assist us and keep the really bad things from happening until we can level out the playing field. There have been multiple meetings. All the world leaders have been in the front of a galactic race. I guarantee it, within the last handful of years. There is a whole timeline that has been rolled out. I firmly believe that we are in the year that disclosure could happen. And the reason why I say that is because once the old Pope stepped down, which has never happened before, ever, and I was a part of the nighttime dream work to help that, to see that to fruition, and Pope Francis came in, who is a walk-in, to start dismantling the church's authority from the inside and put into papal decree many things that he's done in the last couple of years. Please, folks, go look it up. Just start looking at everything that he's been writing into the papal legacy. And he is preparing us all for the major transition, because we can't move forward until we take responsibility for what's happened. A lot of things have been happening currently that are, it's like this big chess game back and forth between the cabal that have got, time travel and spaceships, and the Blue Avians and the other galactics, the Council of 22, who's supporting us from out there and in here. And we are starting to see all the major pieces being moved around. I'm really excited about Justin and Julian's interview with New Earth Project, with Sasha Stone, with the tribunal that's being put together, because that's being put together. The cabal will be put on trial, and it's going to be a world tribunal. And the Blue Avians have assisted in taking certain people off planet to hold them off planet until the tribunal starts. This is the Malaysia flight I'm referring to here. There are some really key fundamental people that to dismantle the cabal and some things that have been going on up to this point. They're witnesses, and they were taken off planet by the Galactics until this tribunal can be put into place. And the reason why I'm so excited about all this is we've got all of these people coming forward. We know that the ball is moving. We know that, it used to be this, someone out there, this dark hand is controlling us all. But now all the pieces are coming forward about this breakaway society that's been operating off planet and running industry, space industry, without our involvement for 50 years now. And all of these things that have been happening, including off-world mining, traveling, space traveling, all kinds of things, right? They're setting us up to introduce that into our life. And how I know and why I'm so excited now about the timing of things, and I'm so sure that this year would be the year. The Pope has also declared a year of Jubilee starting in January of next year. Well, that means his timeline will have to be done by then, of all the papal decrees set up so that everything can be brought before the world, and the ones that were responsible go on trial. All of these new things be put in place, new financial structures, new everything be put in place to support the world, economic and the economy, and us as we awaken. All these other things are starting to be dismantled. HARP, geoengineering, chemtrails, all of this is starting to be scaled back, per the command of the blue avians, who are the wardens of our universe, who are here now helping us.
Wonderful. So my question was, and briefly touched on this, but I know there's a couple things we want to cover. We got about 10 minutes left. Is that what are some things that ordinary people can do while this is happening? I mean,
great. I'm glad you brought that up. Sure. There's a lot of things that just like the average daily person can do. Please be very, very conscious of the food that you're putting in your mouth, because some of these programs got out of control with the fluoride, with the vaccinations, with they're purposefully trying to hold down what the energy of the galaxy and the universe is actually ramping up for us since 2012, which is the access to consciousness, the access to our higher self, the awakening process that's happening in our physical bodies on the planet. We can't have ascension. We're not just going to magically disappear to another dimension. It's a physical ascension. Gaia chose it. We came here to participate in it, meaning that we come down in these physical mortal coils, we activate our DNA, we light ourselves up, and we get to the tipping point, the hunter's monkey, where all of a sudden, simultaneously, a bunch of us have done the work, and then everyone can experience instant understanding and so on. The things to do is don't eat genetically modified food. Support your local growers and farmers. Don't drink the fluorinated water, please. That is one of the. Don't use fluoride toothpaste. Completely take fluoride out of your diet and start focusing on your own health and well-being. Meditate. Take time during the day to break the cycle of the arduous day-to-day things, and just tune in to Source, whatever you recognize Source as, your higher self, God, the light, the central sun, whatever makes sense to you in your belief system structure, and question everything that's around you, and be willing to speak up about what you think and feel to your family and friends. And please, those of us out there that have come here as volunteers, as witnesses to a lot of these programs I was talking about, please find the strength and the courage to come forward and share your story, because it's just like, being a part of the LGBT community, and tell the LGBT, lesbian, gay, transgender, and bisexual people were willing to step forward and tell their families that they were a part of the LGBT community. Nobody had a point of reference. It wasn't humanized. It wasn't that you knew somebody who. It was those gays, those lesbians, those terrible people that the church say should go to hell type of a thing, based on a very old blueprint structure. I would say question everything and talk to your family and your friends and help support one another through this time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I know that we wanted to kind of touch base on your Egypt trip. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yes. And so I was talking all these stuff about ancient aliens and all of these temple sites. Why Egypt is so personally important to me is that in my going back and doing this timeline travel back and forth and understanding fully more about who I am and my commitment to this planet and the evolution on this planet was I think about it was a while ago now. Not thousands of years. Yes, thousands of years. Back in the time of ancient Egypt, I remember, and this is my memory, bringing forward, being the Lyran being, the cat being that brought the sacred temple teachings to the ancient Egypt. Now, the sacred temple teachings are based off a universal law, the principles of frequency, harmonics, chakras, and seven layers of initiation to prepare and to teach people and have a grounding and an anchoring on the planet of universal law ideology, not this crap that they've been teaching us as physics. It's not. It's just a tiny bit of it's all the information we've been given is just little bits of information, but to keep us from understanding the full spectrum of everything. So everything operates of harmonics and frequencies. Everything is intention and so on. And so when I brought this to the ancient Egyptians and the mystery schools were formed, I spent a couple lifetimes ensuring that went on, and then that was dismantled then by the Babylonian structure that came in to demonize these teachings and separate us from ourselves. And so I'm really interested in taking people to Egypt, and I've got this amazing trip planned with Dr. Erin Nell, who is going to be on Ancient Aliens here pretty soon. They should be filming any time now, about astronomer. She's an astroastronomer, temple alignments to the stars. And so check that on at galacticu.com under Sacred Journeys, because it's, if you ever had a inkling to go to Egypt, there's a part of your DNA begging to be unlocked. And I can tell you from example, from doing it myself, going there is very, very powerful, and visiting these ancient temple sites. So check it out. It's really an amazing trip we put together.
Yeah, I was looking at that, and I was like, I felt that, and I've been one of those people that have felt Egypt, and of course, anybody that goes there, I feel the energy from there, and it's like a calling. So yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's pretty powerful.
I feel like it's feel the call, and if you feel the call, go. So.
And there's another thing I want to address too. A lot of people are like, when I've put it up on Facebook posting like, oh, it's a dangerous place to go. It's probably one of the less dangerous places to go right now in the world, because they have been occupied by other governments for well over 5,000 years. Erin and I did a couple radio programs that go into more detail about this, but it's one of the safer places to go now. They have done the hard, arduous work of replacing their entire government and having the people take control back over their country for the first time in thousands of years. They are now run by Egyptian people, by these beautiful ancient Egyptian people who have the blood memory of the temple sites and so on, and they're starting to bring this all forward. Another reason why people are trying to keep, the Dark Ones are trying to keep people out of Egypt, is because this is also one of the root places where the mystery school teachings and instant memory can happen from going and visiting these places in Egypt. And it's very safe infrastructures back in, trash removal, electricity, gas, different things like that. And it hasn't been in many, many years.
Sure,
it's safe.
They get people like you and I there. As the people that were Atlanteans, that's probably the closest part of they'll remember. And they wake up, then they lose control. So, absolutely. But Atlantis is a whole other show. So.
Sure is. It
so
sure
we
is.
have just about another minute. Is there anything that you want to just kind of throw out there before we end the show?
Yes. Thank you. I appreciate that. Now, everything that I do here, in 2012, I made the conscious commitment to dedicate my full life to this work, educating people, bringing the Galactic U radio network platform to Blog Talk, Galactic U as forms of different education of support, ET support, hybridization, abduction program support, Ascension symptom support. Everything it is I do and I create is as a service for humanity. And I am asking if there are those of you out there that have the means. I know things that are really, really tight. I'm 100% community funded. It would be really great if people could jump in there and help continue to keep this program running. I have a gal, Sally, who is carrying the radio program, and there are many different ways to support the work I do, going on the trip, donations through Galactic U, or getting sessions with me. Helps me to continue to just put food on my plate and gas in the generator for electricity as I live completely off grid. And also to get my solar up and running 100% so that I won't need to be reliant upon the, oil field generator. And you can find out more about me at Galactic U, as in Uinta, as in university.com, galacticu.com. And if it resonates, I would sure love your help and support. Oh, my book is coming out this summer. It's going to be really awesome. And it's an autobiography, and look for that, too, as a way to help support.
Sarah, thank you for being on the show. And when that book comes out, I'm sure we'll have you on again, and I'm sure you and I will have many conversations going forward. So,
absolutely.
So much. And everybody, just so you know, we have Roger Teal coming on this Saturday, and we have Tricia McKinnon coming on Sunday. So be listening for that on Soul Talk. So thank you, everybody, and have a wonderful evening, and be blessed. And thank you, Sarah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good night.